Hello and welcome everyone to the Daily News Analysis of 27th of October 2023। तो आज की इम्पोर्टेंट आर्टिकल्स हिंदू न्यूज़पेपर से वन बाय वन देखते हैं। पहला जो है हमारा 8 former Navy officer get death penalty in Qatar। 8 former Indian Navy personnel who had been employed by a company in Doha were handed the death penalty by a local court in Doha on Thursday in an alleged case of espionage. The Indian government expressed shock at the verdict and said all legal options were being explored. The 8-man Captain Navjit Singh Gill, Captain Saurabh Vasisht, Commander Purendu Tiwari, Captain Birendra Kumar Verma, Commander Sugunakar Pakala, Commander Sanjeev Gupta, Commander Amit Nagpal, and Sailor Ragesh had been in the custody of Qatari authorities since August 2022. The Court of First Instance of Qatar passed the judgment against them. According to a statement by the India's Ministry of External Affairs, we are deeply shocked by the verdict of the death penalty and are waiting the detailed judgment. We are in touch with the family members and the legal teams and we are exploring all legal options. We attach high importance to this case and have been following it closely. We will continue to extend all consular and legal assistance, the Ministry of External Affairs statement said, adding that India would take up the matter with the Qatari authorities. Then breaching secrets. The Indian nationals were employed by Doha Global Technology and Consultant Services in Doha and were allegedly accused of breaching sensitive secrets. They were reportedly involved in training various security-related services providers of the state of Qatar. The company was also involved in producing high-tech Italian-origin submarines that are known for stealth capabilities. The first trial in the case was held in March this year, followed by another in June. The men were granted consular access on multiple occasions, and the Indian ambassador to Qatar met them as recently as October 1. Both sides, however, have maintained a veil of secrecy over the case in view of sensitivities involved. High-stake relationship. Former Indian ambassador to Qatar, Deepa Gopalan, highlighted the important role that a large number of former Indian ambassador to Qatar, Deepa Gopalan, highlighted the important role that a large number of Indian migrants play in fostering India-Qatar relations. This verdict could very adversely affect relations between the two countries. There are over 7 lakh Indians in Qatar and we have close economic ties. The Indian government has been following the case closely without doubt but would need to take it up at the highest level to ensure their lives are saved, she said. The verdict is the first major crisis to hit the India-Qatar relationship, which has generally remained steady so far. Prime Minister Narendra Modi visited Doha in 2016, followed by his meeting with Emir of Qatar on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York in 2019. External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar also visited Qatar in February 2022. According to the MEA, Qatar is the largest supplier of LNG to India, which accounts for over 48% of the India's global LNG imports. India also imports ethylene, propylene, ammonia, urea, and polyethylene from Qatar. The verdict drew strong reactions from opposition political parties as the Congress urged the government to use its diplomatic leverage with Qatar to get the officers released at the earliest. Then ISRO to hold more tests for Gaganyaan in coming months. After the successful test After the successful test vehicle D1 TV D1 mission on October 21, the Indian Space Research Organization has lined up more test missions in the month ahead for the Gaganyaan program. Upcoming tests include the TVD2 mission, the GX unmanned orbital demonstration flight, the integrated airdrop test, and the pad abort test. As Unikrishnan Nair, director Vikrama Sarabhai Space Center told The Hindu. A crew module with service module will be used in the GX mission. This unmanned mission to be launched aboard a human-rated LV-M3 will have Vyomamitra, the female robot astronaut designed and developed by the ISRO Internal System Units (IISU) on board. In this mission, the ISRO will put to test control system, a reduced version of the life support system for the crew, thermal protection system, and the parachute systems about capability. Meanwhile, the test vehicle development program will continue, but parallelly the TVD2 will be the second of the four tests planned for demonstrating in flight about capability under different initial conditions with respect to launch vehicle. Unlike the TBD1, the TBD2 will also have onboard a control system for reorienting the attitude of the crew module. Once it is separates, the test vehicle will be same expandable version based on the L40 strap on the multi-purpose vehicle geosynchronous satellite launch vehicle GSLV used in the TB-D1 mission. At the same time, the ISRO is also examining whether the TB-D1 crew module recovered from the sea after a parachute-assisted splashdown can be reused for future tests. Come into contact As the module had come into contact with the salt water, only a detailed inspection can tell whether it can be reused and in what capacity. We are working out a plan to reuse it. We need to open and clean it and see what can be done. Efforts will be taken to divert it for the appropriate test program under Gaganyaan, Dr. Nair said. The next renewed risk. On October 6, the Reserve Bank of India (RBI) stuck to its 6.5% GDP growth projection for the year, with risk from the geopolitical tension, economic fragmentation, volatile financial markets, and an uneven monsoon evenly balanced out by strengthening domestic demand. There was a belief that a period of highlighted uncertainties was ebbing, but as the central bank governor signaled last Friday, new uncertainties have emerged over the fortnight since the Israel-Hamas conflict that erupted a day after the monetary policy review has widened, and Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman has flagged worries about implications on global food fuel fertilizer supplies given India's dependence on fuel and fertilizer imports. Disruption or price spikes could hurt the macroeconomic framework even if the government refrains from passing on higher prices to consumer and farmers in the election season. The RBI chief also pointed to rising US bond yields, which hit a 16-year high of 5% this week. Mixed data point and signals from central banks around the world as the new unknowns, even as known unknowns such as financial market turmoil, have got more pronounced. A glimpse of this anxiety was visible this week with the sharpest sell of Indian bourses since July. There is There is no certainty that RBI would still uphold its evenly balanced outlook towards the risk to growth. However, the finance ministry, while acknowledging that global uncertainties have compounded, seems largely sanguine for now in its outlook for the economy. Its monthly economic review released on Monday asserts that growth remains on track. Inflation is easing after a temporary seasonal surge in July-August. Consumption demand is strengthening and investment demand is also firming up on the imminent fears of rising crude oil prices. It is noted that July-September quarter prices were still were lower than the $109.5 and at $97.9 averages in the first and second quarter of 2022-23. The weak foreign trade picture is expected to recover and industrial job creation prospects are high for the next two quarters, while higher demand for the housing and vehicle loans reflects a bolstered confidence level in households. It added India's macro fundamentals may well hold up through the latest global storm, but the government would do well to drill a little deeper into the consumption and hiring trends. The last quarter has seen a sharp slump in small car sales, consumer non-durables, producer reporting weak rural demand and IT firms scaling down growth and hiring hopes there is still much to be done to correct an unrecover uneven recovery which would eventually hamper a broader investment revival. The Tamil Nadu Experience on Caste Survey. The Bihar caste-based survey has spurred nationwide calls for a similar census and discussions about exceeding the 50% reservation limit. However, looking at the Tamil Nadu's past, a caste census alone may not lead to increased other backward classes reservation. The second backward classes commission in Tamil Nadu even recommended a reduction in reservation percentage. The first BC panel led by A.N. Sathanathan suggested raising BC reservation, but the idea of a creamy layer has not gained political backing. How did the second BC Commission came into being? In January 1980, smarting from a severe drubbing in the Lok Sabha election, the then AIDMK regime headed by M.G. Ramachandran announced the hike in the share of reservation for the BC from the 31% to 50%, taking the total quantum to 68%. That included 80%, 18% for the scheduled caste and scheduled tribes. After SC/ST STs got 1% exclusive reservation in the June 1990. The overall tally went up to 69% once the decision became a subject matter of litigation in the Supreme Court. The state governments gave an undertaking in October 1982 that it would set up a panel to review the existing enumeration and classification of BCs. 2 months later, the panel was constituted with the former chairman of the Tamil Nadu Public Service Commission, J. A. Ambasankar, as the head. The BC panel submitted its report to the government in February 1985. What was the highlight of the commission's work? The socio-educational economic survey was conducted in two stages during the 1983-84. In the first stage, a cent% door-to-door enumeration was conducted for the enumeration and classification of BC. This was decided as the Amba-Shankar Commission found that the previous panel, one headed by the Sathanathan, took into account only the 1921 census, when 88 communities were enumerated as against 31 in 1931, and projected it over 50 years to arrive at the caste-wise population, estimating the total population of the state as 4 lakh 90, sorry, 4 crore 99 lakh 90,743. In the second BC panel drew up a list of 298 communities classified under the main group such as BCs. Most BCs they notified communities, SCs and STs and others. The panel confined itself essentially to the BCs without giving an exhaustive breakup of all the community. The commission had worked out the that the population of the BCs was 3 crore 35 lakh 70,805, accounting for 67.15% of the state overall population. In respect of SCs, the figure was 92 lakh 8,917, STs 5 lakh 54,918, and others 66 lakh 56,100. In March 1989, an exclusive quota 20% was provided for MBCs and DNCs within the total share of BCs of 50% based on the Ambassador panels working. The State Backward Classes Commission in May 2012 arrived at the figure of 1 crore 23 lakh 17,745 as the population of the MBC and the DNCs. The commission held a percent random sample survey of students in the 37,000 schools along with a survey of students in all the 232 colleges and 7 universities. Finally, the ascertain the reservation of BCs in the public service city arranged a full-scale survey of public servants in each grades as of July 1, 1983. What were the recommendations of the commission? Even as the panel was the was in the last leg of its work, dependence differences erupted between the majority of members and the chairman Ambassador, while the latter wanted the quantum of reservation for BCs to be brought down to 32% so that the overall figure did not exceed the 50% ceiling. The dissenting members had argued that as the population of the BCs were about 67%, the quantum should be at least 50%. Another area of difference was the coverage of reservation. The chairman has insisted that all those found eligible for quota under Article 15 Clause 4, which deals with the special provision for the advancement of any socially and educationally backward classes of the citizen or for the SCs and STs, will not be automatically enlightened entitled the reservation in appointment under Article 16 Clause 4, which talks of making reservation in jobs for any backward class that is not adequately represented in public services. So he was for two separate lists for a list of BCs, one under Article 15 Clause 4 and another under Article 16 Clause 4, but the members had all favored only one list. They asserted that the social backwardness and the educational backwardness are inseparable and intertwined from seeing certain families in certain backward classes occupying jobs and employment cannot mean educational advancement of their respective communities. Educational benefits contemplated under Article 15 Clause 4 are the means and the benefits under Article 14 Clause 4 to get a job is the end. Two sets of recommendation, one from the chairman and another from the member, were furnished to the government, which however chose not to disturb the status quo with regard to quantum of reservation 50% for BCs. The government also did not agree with the recommendation of a deletion of 24 communities, even though it provided the line of the panel for the inclusion of 29 communities. How did the 1992 Supreme Court judgment affect state reservations? In the wake-up of Supreme Court's judgment in Mondal Commission case in 1992, the state was forced to enact a law to safeguard the 69% quota and have it placed under the ninth schedule during 2007 and 9. The DMK government has exclusively provided 3.5% each for Muslim and Christian within the quota of BC. Subsequently, the separate quota for Christian was withdrawn in May 2009. Arun Thathiyar, a constituent of SCs, were given 3% within the 18% quota for the Supreme Court's for the SCs. In February 2021, the AIDMK region got a bill adopted by the Assembly for 10.5% reservation for Baniyars or Banyakula Kshatriyas in education and employment within the overall quantum of 20% for the embassies. However, the Supreme Court a year later struck down the law on the ground that the data of the Ambashankar panel were not contemporaneous. Then why are the China-Bhutan boundary talks significant? China and Bhutan held their 25th round of boundary talks in Beijing and signed a cooperation agreement on the responsibility and function of the joint technical team on the delimitation and demarcation of the Bhutan-China boundary. This advances their three-step roadmap initiated in 2021 of the border resolution, building on the positive momentum since their last talks in 2016. Why are the talks this week significant? The boundary talks between Bhutan and China were held after a gap of 7 years and indicate significant progress has been made. Bhutan and Tibetan Autonomous Region share a contiguous border to Bhutan north and west since 1984. Bhutan and China had held a 24 round of talks to resolve the disputes until 2016, but the 25th round appeared to have been held up after the Doklam standoff between the India-Chinese armies in 2017 and then the COVID-19 pandemic in 2019-21. However, the two sides used the pause to hold talks at over levels in rapid succession, especially after China threatened to open a new front for a border dispute to Bhutan's east. Since then, the expert group of diplomats on both sides met in 2021 to agree on a three-step roadmap, and the first boundary delimitation technical talks were held in August 2023. In an interview with The Hindu this month, Bhutan's Prime Minister Dr. Lutaya Shering said that the two sides were inching towards completing the roadmap even before his government demits office ahead of the Bhutanese election in 2024. The Financial Minister Tundi Dorji's visit to Beijing indicates that the further progress has indeed been made. What What is the three-step roadmap? The three-step roadmap MOU signed by the Bhutanese Foreign Minister and Chinese Assistant Foreign Minister in 2021 and the JTT established to implement the roadmap by the expert group in August are hoping to draw a line clearly delineating Bhutanese and Chinese territory for the first time. Bhutan and China do not have diplomatic ties as Bhutan has traditionally avoided diplomatic relations with all United Nations Security Council permanent members. The three-step roadmap involves first agreeing to the border on the table, then visiting the sites on the ground, and then only formally demarcating the boundary. Why is India watching closely? For India, given the background breakdown in its ties with China over the standoff at the line of actual control from 2020, any hint of a closer ties between China and one of its Project Never is a cause for worry. More specifically, New Delhi is watching the demarcation discussion over the document as almost amongst the proposal China has placed on the table in an agreement to swap areas in Doklam under Bhutanese control with areas in Jakarlung and Pasamlung, which China claims the Doklam Tri-Junction cuts very close to India's Siliguri corridor, a narrow area that connects the northeastern states to the rest of India, and India would not like to see China gain access to any area closer to it. Since the Doklam stand-up in 2017, China has doubled down its control of the Doklam Plateau, and according to recent Pentagon report, has continued to build underground storage facilities, new roads, and new villages in disrupted areas in neighboring Bhutan, erasing many of the strategic gains that New Delhi had hoped for after China agreed to step back from the standard point in 2017. Finally, India's worry is over China's demand for the full diplomatic relation with Bhutan and opening an embassy in Thimphu, Given India's challenge with the Chinese project and funding in other neighboring countries including Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka and Maldives, any Chinese presence in a small country like Bhutan would be problematic. However, Bhutan's leadership has thus far said that all decisions would consider India's interest and that it has always consulted India on issues of concern. Supreme Court allows surrogacy strike down rule banning use of donor gamete. The Supreme Court has protected the right of the parenthood of a woman suffering from a rare medical conditions by staying the operation of a law which threatened to wreck her hopes to become a mother through surrogacy. The woman has the Mayor Rukitansi Foster Hodger syndrome medical board records showed she has absent ovaries and absent uterus. Hence, she cannot produce her own eggs. Of Opsitis, the couple had begun the process of gestational surrogacy on December 7 last year. However, a government notification on March 14 this year amended the law banning the use of donor gametes. It is said intending couple must use their own gamete for surrogacy. The petition was filed in Supreme Court challenging the amendment as a violation of women's right to parenthood. The amendment, which is now coming in the way of intending couple and preventing them from achieving parenthood through surrogacy, we find is prima facie contrary to what is intended under the main provision of the Surrogacy Act, both in both in form as well as in substance. A bench of Justice B.V. Nagarathna and Ujjal Bhuyan held in a recent order. Senior advocate Sanjay Jain, the petitioner lawyer, argued that the amended paragraph 1D of the Surrogacy Regulation Rules 2022 by ruling out the use of donor eggs had made it impossible for his client and her husband to continue with the process of surrogacy to achieve parenthood. He argued that the 2023 amendment contradicted Section 2R and 4 of the Surrogacy Act 2021, which recognized the situation when a medical condition would require a couple to opt for gestation surrogacy in order to become parents. Mr. Jain referred to Rules 14 Clause A of the Surrogacy Rule, which listed medical or congenital conditions owing to which a woman could choose become a mother through gestation surrogacy. They included having no uterus or missing uterus or abnormal uterus like hypoplastic uterus or intrauterine adhesion, or thin endometrium or small unicornate uterus, T-shaped uterus, or if the uterus is surgically removed due to any medical condition such as gynecological cancer. Women's choice. The lawyer said the rule made it clear that the choice was solely that of the woman. He said his client had begun the surrogacy process months before the amendment, which cannot be implemented retrospectively. The government, through additionally Solicitor General Aishwarya Bharti, counted Aishwarya Bharti counted that the process of surrogacy can be upheld under the law unless the child was genetically related to the intending couple. This exempted the use of donor eggs In in an 11-page order, the court agreed with Mr. Jain's argument that the law permitting gestational surrogacy was woman-centric. The decision to have a surrogate child was entirely based on the woman's inability to become a mother owing to her medical congenital condition. Such a condition included the absence of a uterus or repeatedly failed pregnancies, multiple pregnancies, or an illness which make it impossible for her to carry a pregnancy to term or would make the pregnancy life-threatening. The amendment cannot contradict Rule 14 Clause A, which specifically recognizes the absence of a uterus or any allied condition as a medical indication necessitating gestational surrogacy. The court held, addressing the government's contentious that the surrogate child should be genetically related to the couple. The court said the child would be related to the husband. In this regard, it may be noted that the expression genetically related to the intending couple has to be read as being related to the husband when Rule 14A applies, the court said. Then super rich income share having amid middle class mobility CBDT. India's tax base has widened sharply since 2013-14 with individual moving up in the income ladder and the proportion of super rich taxpayer income declining. The Central Board of Direct Taxes said on Thursday, days after the Congress cited income tax data to show widening income inequality in the country. The overall number of income tax return filed by the individuals has risen from 3.36 crore to 6.37 crore through assessment years 2013-14 to 2021-2022, while there is also an increase in the number of returns filed by the individual taxpayer across various ranges of gross total income. The CBDT said in a statement, in the range of gross total income up to 5 lakh, the number of return filed filed by individual taxpayer has increased from 2.62 crore in AY 2013-14 to 3.47 crore in AY 2021-2022. Registering an increase of 32%. This range of income include individual having income below taxable limit who may not be filing returns. To the board pointed out, for higher income ranges of 5 lakh to 10 lakh and 10 lakh to 25 lakh, the number of individual return filed by surged to 295% and 291% over the period, respectively. The this indicates that individual taxpayers are showing a positive trend of migration to higher range of gross total income, the CBDT said. Digging deeper into the data reveals that the proportionate contribution of gross total income of 1% individual taxpayer vis-a-vis all individual taxpayers has decreased from 15.9% to 14.6%, the board said, while the share of the bottom 25% taxpayers increased from 8.3% to 8.4% over the same period. The proportion of gross total income in income of a middle 74% group of individual taxpayer increased from 75.8% to 77% in the above period, the statement said, adding that the average gross total income for individual taxpayer increased from about 4.5 lakh rupees to about 7 lakh rupees over the 9-year period, representing an increase of 56%. The increase in average gross total income for top 1% individual taxpayers is 42%, while that for bottom 25% individual taxpayer is 58%. It added, the data indicates a robust growth in the gross total income of individuals across the different income groups subsequent to AY 2013-14, the board said. Adding this was reflected in the increase in the net direct tax collection from 6.3 lakh 38 lakh crore rupees in 2013-14 to 16.6 lakh crore rupees in 22-23. Then India's green hydrogen move may worsen pollution if steps are not in place, says study. India's plan to produce so-called green hydrogen, where the gas is produced without resulting in fossil fuel emission, may end up worsening pollution if proper checks and balances are not in place. According to a study by environmental and energy think tank Climate Risk Horizons, the National Green Hydrogen Mission piloted by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy exports expected to manufacture 5 million tons by 2030. This would require the installation of a renewable energy capacity worth 125 gigawatt and the use of 250,000 gigawatt uh, our unit of power equivalent to about 13% of India's present electricity generation. As of August 2023, in India's total renewable energy capacity stood at 131 gigawatt. The 2030 green hydrogen plan thus envisages adding an equivalent RE capacity by 2030. This is over and above the 500 gigawatt of RE capacity that India has committed to install by 2030 as part of the Paris Agreement. To put that in perspective, India installed only 15 gigawatt of new solar and wind capacity in 2023 against the 45 gigawatt per year needed to reach the 230 target using coal-based power. The MNRE has defined green hydrogen as hydrogen produced in a way that emits no more than 2 kg of carbon dioxide per kg of such hydrogen. Currently producing 1 kg of grey hydrogen as it is known ends up emitting 9 kg of carbon dioxide. While a detailed methodology is awaited, the definition as it stands leave a lot to interpretations, and CRH Chief Executive Assis Fernandez in the report released on Thursday. The main concern is that if electrolyzers were run 24/7, they would be expected to operate even at night when no solar power is available. Where will the electricity come from? If it comes from the India's coal power grid in general, it will in fact increase the carbon emissions since about 70% of the electricity on the grid is coal generated. More in non-daylight hours when solar generation is nil. The report notes the vast majority of the project have not disclosed their source of electricity. It is also not clear if those few projects that have committed to meet 100% of their requirements from these sources. The next is Sensex sinks 1.4%. Sensex sinks 1.4% to 4-month low on geopolitical US bond yield worries. The benchmark S&P BSE Sensex extended losses to a sixth session on Thursday, sliding 1.4% to its lowest close in 4 months as investor turns it is amid mounting geopolitical tension over the possibility of Israel-Hamas conflict widening across the oil-rich West Asian region and the rising US bond yield that could signal more capacity outflows from emerging markets. The 30 stock index slumped 909.91 points to 63,148.15%, the lowest close since June 26, led by auto finance and consumer stocks. Mahindra and Mahindra led losses, declining 4.06%, followed by Bajaj Finance 3.54%, Asian Paints 3.36%. ये उतना इम्पोर्टेंट है नहीं वैसे। नेक्स्ट देखते हैं, व्हाट डज द एबॉर्शन वर्डिक्ट मीन फॉर द रिप्रोडक्टिव जस्टिस? The Supreme Court this month rejected a woman's plea for abortion. The woman, 26 weeks pregnant, married and with two children and dealing with postpartum psychosis, requested in termination because she was physically, emotionally, mentally, financially, and medically unable to carry, deliver, or raise a child, denying her request. The three-judge bench headed by the Chief Justice of India said the court's recognition of a woman's autonomy cannot eclipse the right of the unborn child. Gauri Pillai, an assistant professor at the National Law School of India University, explains the court verdict 1 year after the landmark ruling expanded the scope of abortion rights in India. Excited exports the Supreme Court in 2020's uh, X versus NCT acknowledged women's right to choose. How does the present verdict interpret this right? There is no doubt that the verdict dilutes women's right to choose and as understood by previous Supreme Court decision, including the landmark X versus NCT. On the one hand, rights are rarely absolute and are typically subject to limitations. On the other, in the context of abortion, India court have not explicitly articulated what these limitations are. As far as the level of constitutional principle, they have tended to see the right as vesting solely with the woman. X versus NCT declared that it is the woman alone who has the right over her body. On the other hand, in the context of abortion, Indian courts have not explicitly articulated what these limitations are. At the level of constitutional principle, they have tended to see the right as vesting solely with the woman. Woman X versus NCT declared that it is the woman alone who has the right over her body and is the ultimately decision maker on the abortion. However, in practice, when individual women come before courts, a discourse on fertile rights has begun to emerge. Women, it seems, are not ultimate decision makers. The leads to incoherence in justice. Prudence, the constitutional right to abortion does not appear to accommodate the limitation the court authorities in practice. It also risks reducing the court's proclamation on women's rights. Too rhetoric, India has taken pride in its progressive abortion laws that respect women's autonomy. The court refused to hear argument on the autonomy in this testifies that the court seems to be fitting some form of vital right to life. It is not surprising that the autonomy was seen to be a different footing and lost out. This reasoning could also create hierarchy. Certain forms of autonomy, saying ask for abortion in rape cases, will be seen as more weight when balanced against life, and other forms like the parent petitioner as less weighty. This fitting exercise indicates why it is so important to be clear on what the vital interest involved is. Is it life? Is it a form of a potential life which would arguably be less weighty, irrespective of what the fetus is, which is not a legal determination. What status should be granted within the law, and how should this legal status, if granted, be protected through restricting abortion or other means? The court earlier held that continuing with unwanted pregnancy adversely impact mental health and can be grounds for abortion. What was its present stance? This is another unfortunate example of a seemingly Expansive constitutional principle reduced the rhetoric in practice. In X versus NCT, the Supreme Court did not confine mental health to medical diagnosis. Rather, the court said it must be understood based on the petitioner's self and experiences. In the present case, the petitioner pleaded for an abortion because she was suffering from postpartum psychosis, lack of sleep, hallucinations, suicide attempts after her previous pregnancy. She submitted prescription as evidence of her medical condition, stressing that the postpartum psychosis was more severe than postpartum depressions. While the court eventually decided that the mental health ground for abortion did not extend beyond 24 weeks of gestation, it questioned the validity of the petitioner argument, suggesting that the prescription might have been doctorated to bolster the case. The theory is when the fetus reaches a point of viability where it can exist outside the womb of woman with medical support, the right to abortion should be curtailed. Viability was most famously endorsed by the US Supreme Court in Roe versus Wade in 1973. In 1992, this was replaced with the different test. In 2022, the court rejected the viability standard completely. In India, the viability of the fetus has historically had no purchase in restricting abortion, while India since India's 1971 law allows third trimester allocation in limited circumstances. This appears to have been driven by a need to protect women's health rather than protect the fetus. At the time of passing the 1971 law, only two members of the Legislative Assembly protested against abortion, calling it murder and a crime against humanity. The other endorsed it and affirmed that there is no violation of the right to life in any manner. Then as the last article on masking the Indian osteoporosis care crisis. Najma is a 55-year-old housewife who began to feel bone pain all over her body some years ago. First it was mild, but after a while I felt it constantly. She says I went to many doctors. We got a few normal X-rays, so they gave me a painkiller, but I did not get better. One doctor even prescribed as antidepressant, thinking it was all my head. After 2 or 3 years of this treatment, I consulted a doctor who said my bones were probably becoming weaker as my periods had stopped long ago. It was the first time I had heard such thing. She suggested a scan to check my bone strength. The report showed osteoporosis. The doctor said that alongside causing me pain, osteoporosis would also increase the chances of or fracture. Mr. Najma, Mrs. Najma is not an exemption. Thus, unpleasant reality is that the only small percentage of people in India receive care for their osteoporosis, a condition characterized by weakening the bones. We have all seen people begin to stoop as they grow older. That is because of osteoporosis. The weakening of bone not only causes long-term pain but also changes in posture and increases chances of fractures and nerve injury if the bone affected is the spine. All of these problems negatively impact the quality of the life and increase disability and financial burden on the family. And yet osteoporosis is not receiving the attention it deserves in medical practices. Though there are no large-scale studies on osteoporosis in India, projected data shows that at least 46 million women in India currently live with postmenopausal osteoporosis, which is only one type of osteoporosis if you include women who had surgeries to remove their uterus, people who used medications for a long time, and men who developed osteoporosis because of old age. The number may be over double. In 2019 study also revealed that India was the highest contributor of osteoporosis fracture related deaths disability worldwide. There are enormous gaps in the knowledge about osteoporosis even among doctors, says Alfia Kaki, a doctor in Guwahati. Nobody with long-term pain is going to make an appointment with an endocrinologist, which is where all the knowledge about bone condition is concentrated. Age of the date, they will either come to a general practitioner, or if it is worsens to an pediatric. And in India, doctors in this capacity are ill-equipped to handle osteoporosis. Dr. Alfia claim is supported by the study conducted among the 222 medical practitioners at both graduate and postgraduate level in South India, and a test to test their knowledge about osteoporosis. The study revealed that the mean score of doors was 22.5%, with every single doctor scoring less than 50%, considering that Indian women have many micronutrient deficiencies and do not set aside time for exercise. There needs to be a high index of suspicion for osteoporosis in every patient, says Monisha Deka, a consultant physician working in Central Railway Hospital, Guwahati. Every other older female patient I see has osteoporosis, and because I understand how widely prevalent prevalent it is, I make it to a point look for it. Osteoporosis is not a secondary diagnosis a doctor can keep at the back of their mind. One must actively look for and rule it out in patients with vague bone pains. Even in patients who have had fractures and have undergone surgery, it is not routine for doctors here to go back to see why the patient bone was fragile enough to break. This is truly unfortunate, says Dr. Alfia. Also of interest is that most of the Indian population does not have access to DEXA or the bone mineral density scan, the gold standard test for osteoporosis. When I wanted a DEXA for my mother, I called my hospital and centers, said Mohammed Aslam Ali. Only two or three centers have the scan facility in Guwahati, all private, and Guwahati is a state capital. I can only imagine what it is likely in other areas. He says a study found that in India there are only 0.26 DEXA machines per million of the population. If you look at the guidelines for the treatment, they say perform a DEXA for diagnosis and start medication. The guidelines also ask us to repeat the DEXA yearly to see if the treatment is working. This focus on a scan which is available to barely 10% of the population is unreasonable. As Dr. Alfia, there is a need for conversation in the medical circle about how to diagnose and effectively treat osteoporosis in resource limited setups. In resource limited settings, I used the Singh index to diagnose osteoporosis, says Surajan Bhattacharya, a retired professor of physical medicine and rehabilitation who worked in a mission hospital in Bisam, Cuttack, Odisha, serving a poor locality. The Singh index is a score that requires only an X-ray of the patient's pelvis to diagnose osteoporosis. I did not have the facilities to check vitamin D levels in blood, so I also started them on calcium and vitamin D supplements without the blood test. He adds, Dr. Surajan's experience suggests that it In the realm of osteoporosis care, India's infrastructure limitation can be overcome by acquiring proper knowledge and engaging in meaningful discussion within our context. The Osteoporosis Day 23 October, the theme was build better bones to do so. We must realize that our nation is grappling with this silent epidemic. Millions suffer in silence as their pain goes unnoticed and their quality of life is compromised. To bridge the osteoporosis care gap in India, we must promote awareness and aims for early intervention. It is time to empower healthcare providers everywhere with the context-specific knowledge to diagnose, treat, and prevent this debilitating condition, ensuring a healthier and pain-free future for all. So this is all for today, friends. We will meet from tomorrow onwards on with new news article from the Hindu. So thank you till then. Bye bye.